Hello folks, welcome to my YouTube channel Watercolor Impressions. This is continuation of Absolute Beginner series for watercolors. This week we are going to learn how to paint boats. Before you go, hit the subscribe button so you guys can get weekly video updates from our channel. And let's get started, guys. As always, I'll provide the drawing template and reference, and please check my video description. There's a link so you guys can download the template as well as references so that you guys can paint with me. When it comes to drawing, I'm a big fan of keeping everything simple. So you can see I'm also sketching in a way that I don't lift my pencil off the paper. I try to connect the shapes from one point to another point. And being said that, when I'm painting these boats, I'm not going to put as much as details I would if I'm painting a personal work or painting for an exhibition. So being said that, since it's a beginner series, I want to make sure that you guys get comfortable painting boats, which is really simple. That's why there's thousands of parts in any sailboats or any kind of boat, so I simplified in a way that it's easy to paint. So I started with the deck area. So the deck area is usually white, so I'm using a little bit of neutral tint and a little bit of white paint in it. And there is also a glass at the top, so I'm using a little bit of gradient in it and I'm mixing it. I'll be painting all the boats on wet on wet technique. If you don't know what's wet on wet technique, check the video link I attached above. And you can see I'm also connecting all the shapes together. So now I'm focusing on the hull area. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to draw a decal which connects the deck area and the hull. So I'm going to take white paint and a little bit of yellow ochre in it, so that kind of gives a little bit of dirty hull for us. So since I have a lot of paint collecting at the bottom, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to take that and use as a reflection as in the water. So any kind of boats which is sitting on a plane of water, it has reflections. There's two types of reflections. There is a distorted one, there's clean one. So I'm going to do this reflection as clean as possible. So and you can also see before it dries out, I put a darker paint where the boat sits, and that also anchors the boat in a water plane. So now I'm adding the details. So these are the details of the rails which people stand or which people able to hold on to it when they go sailing. And I'm also adding a little bit of decals to show some forms in the hull area. So it got the paint got dried quite a bit, so I glazed over it again with the same water. And you can see in the water, so everything gets distorted if there's wavy water. So I'm trying to make sure the plane which is reflecting on the plane, I'm making sure there's a little bit of distortion in it. So this gives an impression of distortion in the water as well. So now I'm painting the glass area. So the glass area also reflecting in the water as well. And there's also a area which is at the top and which is like for shade, and that also will be reflecting on the water as well. So I'm going to do that as well. And you could see in a matter of seconds we painted a simple boat. If I want to add more details on this boat, I could go ahead and do it, but this is for demo purpose for absolute beginners, so I want to make it simple as possible. And let's move on to the next boat and let's implement what we learned in this one. As always, I'll keep my drawing as simple as possible. And I also went near this boat and checked how it looks like, and it has a lot of details and like almost like thousands of details there, but I'll simplify in a way that it reads as a boat and with all the shadow patterns and the lighting. So this boat I'm going to choose a different approach, but I'll be painting on wet. So now what I will do is I'll start painting the shadow pattern on the left hand side. And you can see for the shadow pattern I'm using neutral tint and a little bit of cobalt blue in it and a little bit of white paint in it. And you can see as soon as we put the shadow pattern, you can see there's a light side and there's a shadow side. And I left the light part as the white paper because that's a beautiful thing about watercolors. It gives an impression of lighting in the paper. And it's always, you can see in the shadow side, I put a little bit of a darker tone because that shows the forms of the shadow side. And I'm also glazing over again on the shadow side to get some forms. And I'm also doing soft reflection on this. To do soft reflection is super easy. You wet the paper. Wet the paper first, and you put the colors, reflecting the boat, and it will give this miraculous shapes where you can paint in hands. And that's a beautiful thing about watercolors. And you could see I'm also painted a decal, and that also shows a little bit of form in the boat. I'm adding a little bit of details for the rails, which is on the sitting the front side, And I'm also squinting my eyes, checking if the values are aligning properly, and it shows the forms for the shadow side. So I add a little bit of darker tone here and there, and that's it, folks. And we're done with the second boat, and in the next one we will see how to paint the sailboats. Even though I painted tons of sailboats, I failed miserably on the left hand side, so I'm gonna do another one. So whenever I paint sailboats, I usually start with the biggest and the longest side of the sailboat. So that is the mast. So that's a center shape which connects the deck area. You can see I'm connecting all the shapes to the sail as well as to the deck area. And I also painted the shadow area, which is in red color. I'll start with the top part of the hull, and I'm using French Ultramarine Blue for that. And I'm connecting that shape with a little bit of yellow ochre and a little bit of white paint in it, so that I get the dirty, hull on it. And before it dries out, I'm putting the darker part at the bottom so it anchors the boat on the water. And I thought it would be nice to add some people in there to get some shape for the scale for the sailboat, and that's it. So this is another hard thing to do when you paint sailboats, because there's it attached to a lot of cables and wires, and I usually don't have a steady hand, so I don't get straight lines. So I think you better drink when you do this. And I also added the reflection, and I kept it really simple as possible. Whenever you do reflections, make sure to keep it less marks as possible, and that will give a beautiful impression of reflections on the water. And let's jump on to the next boat. The last boat we are going to do is called the fishing boat, and this is a fiberglass boat, and there's like 2 person can sit and fish while they sail. And this boat, and I'm going to add a little bit of more details compared to the other boats we have done so far, and let's also implement what we learned so far in the other boats as well. And for this boat, and I'm trying to keep my drawing as simple as possible, and I'm trying to connect the shapes. And when I squint my eyes, the details are the one I see when I squint my eyes. Those are the details I'm putting on my drawing, as well as when I paint, I do the exact same thing. So that's it. Let's put our first wash. For the first wash, I'm using Cobalt Blue, because there is a lighter part at the top, and this on the shadow area. Even though it's in the shadow area, I just want to see where everything sits, and I'm just going to add those details here. For the darker part, I'm using a little bit of French Ultramarine Blue. So this is inside the boat, and this is the shadow part inside the boat. For that, I'm using a little bit of Cobalt Blue and neutral tint, and a little bit of white paint in it. And you can see, as soon as we put the shadow part of the boat, and the whole shape coming alive, the form starts happening. And I'm also adding a little bit of details inside as well, the shadow part. And I always a big fan of connecting the shapes together. And I don't like things unconnected in my painting, so I connect all the shapes together. In a matter of seconds, you could see, as soon as we put the shadow part, everything came alive. Let's add some shadows for the top hut, and I'm using French Ultramarine Blue for that. So I'm connecting that shape to the boat at the bottom part, the rails, using neutral tint. And since the seating area and the passenger area, since in the shadow side, I want to add a dark pigment there as well. For that, I'm using French Ultramarine Blue. For the back part, I'm using the exact same thing. I'm trying to get as dark as possible because I want to show the shadow side. And I'm also added the rails, and the shadow side look a little bit weak, so I'm going to glaze over again to show the shadow pattern. And I'm also trying to make some decals here and there in the front part of the hull. And you can see, once we add the shadows and a little bit of darker tone inside the boat, and everything came alive. So this is where the boat was docked to a deck area. So I'm connecting that shape, and I want to do some reflections of the boat on the water. This boat was docked into green mossy water, so I want to add the green mossy reflections. For the green mossy reflection, I'm using Viridian, a little bit of yellow ochre in it. And before it dries out, I'm going to add a darker pigment where the boat sits, and I'm spraying some water, and that will give a beautiful illusion of undistorted reflections on the water as well. And now I'm taking white paint wherever I went over it, and I'm trying to bring some highlights here and there based on my reference. And you can see the front part of the hull, since it's on the light side and it wasn't showing that much form, so I'm going to glaze over a little bit of a dark area with a little bit of yellow ochre in it. And that's it, folks. Take my reference and download my template, and let's see what you can come up with. and if you ended up doing it, and share it with me. Thanks again for watching this how to paint boats video tutorial with me. Let me know what you guys learned from this video, and let me know what's your favorite part in this painting. If you have any of the subjects you want me to cover on watercolors, write me at watercolorimpressions@gmail.com. Before you go, hit the subscribe button so you guys can get weekly video updates from our channel. And good luck with your painting, folks.